A fascinating adventure. We're glad to have you on board, Lieutenant Novak. You are dismissed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for saving me. I'm looking forward to my duties on your ship.
After he had left the captain's office, Dresrad allowed himself a smile. The infiltration had gone perfectly, for the real Lieutenant Novak had died months ago. He was Dresrad Ziljaz, a spy of the Akrali domain. His mission was to find out the greatest secret of humanity, the greatest secret of the galaxy, actually. How humans had become the dominant species of the known universe. They had appeared on the galactic stage just centuries ago, an unremarkable, mediocre race not gifted with any special abilities. Yet for some inexplicable reason they had managed to overtake most of their competitors in the blink of an eye. This was due to their ability to completely disregard the effects of space-time FTL debt that every other race was suffering from. While it was possible to travel faster than light by ripping a gateway into another dimension, it turned out that the universe was not fond of its natural laws being bent and broken. This distortion of space and time resulting in a debt that had to be paid. After an FTL jump, every biological creature suffered from a form of space lag. Travelers were completely exhausted and needed at least 5 to 6 days to recover from the devastating effects of the jump. Even when hibernating in cryosleep, the time to recuperate varied between 3 and 4 days. As a result, wars across star systems were almost impossible. An enemy fleet arriving was practically helpless for at least 3 to 5 days. Even if the fleet arrived far outside the system of attack, out of reach of the invaded, it gave the attack system at least 2 weeks' time to track and prepare for the assault. Trade was bothersome as well. It did not make much sense for goods to arrive in a system when the crew was incapable of servicing the cargo for several days. Traveling across the stars for reasons of tourism, exploration, or diplomacy was severely limited as well. Few creatures were willing to bear the space-time debt burden and only traveled to another star system when it was absolutely necessary. Most systems in the galaxy were thus self-sufficient, and exploration and expansion slow. Even the Raista, the oldest FTL-capable race in the galaxy, had not found a solution to this problem in over 100,000 years of FTL travel. Yet humans, for some inexplicable reason, were the only race seemingly unaffected. Expansions that had taken most other races millennia, humans had done within a few short centuries. Like a locust swarm, they had ventured out from the Sol system, completely changing the state of the galaxy. When their military forces arrived in a hostile system, they were capable of attacking within just a few hours, sometimes even minutes. They had no problem with transporting goods between the stars and servicing the cargo right away. Humans could jump into a system, offload the cargo, take in new cargo, and jump away within a few hours. Everyone else would have needed at least 3 to 4 days to accomplish such a task. With such an advantage at its disposal, humanity had become the strongest military and commercial power in the galaxy. Humans were practically everywhere. Hours, or sometimes even minutes after their jump and landing on a planet, human tourists, diplomatic envoys, delegates, or human explorers would emerge singing out of their starships. The only visible effect of the FTL jump were slurred speech, giggling, and an uneasy step. All of these symptoms were gone by the next day at the latest. Every other biological being in the galaxy would have been hard-pressed to remain conscious such a short time after an FTL jump. For centuries, the galaxy had wondered how humans did this, and Dresrad was about to find out. There had been other attempts at infiltration, but his attempt was the most elaborate by far. A few months ago, a scout ship of the Akrali had found a damaged human exploration vessel in an outlying Akrali system. The sole inhabitant, Lieutenant Novak, had been dead for weeks. The Acroli Council then decided this was a unique opportunity that had to be capitalized on. The plan was ingenious. Dresdrad would take on Lieutenant Novak's identity, infiltrate a human ship, and finally reveal their secret. For the past 2 months before the start of his mission, he had extensively studied human history, culture, behavior, and customs. Through several large-scale operations that had cost more than a frigate, his exterior and interior had been altered. His appearance changed from that of an acrolite to that of a human. Nothing short of a full DNA scan would reveal that he was in fact an alien. Novak's exploration ship was then transported to a nearby system with a human presence, where Dresdrad had activated an emergency beacon with a deliberately weak signal in order not to cause suspicion. 2 weeks later, he was rescued by the trade ship ESS Morgan. The captain and his crew were immensely interested in Novak's story, a story which Dresdrad told so convincingly that no one suspected anything. Now he was on his way to Earth, which the ship should reach in a few months. Dresdrad did not plan to be on the ship for longer than a few weeks. Fate had other plans. Soon after leaving the captain's quarters, the ship shook violently.
We are under attack.
The internal communications systems shouted.
All personnel to their stations. Lieutenant Novak, report to the bridge immediately.
Cursing in his native tongue, the acroli rushed to the nearest elevator. He had to obey, otherwise his cover could have been blown. When he arrived, the captain was already there.
Novak, take the nav console. Our navigator was wounded in the attack, but as an explorer, you should be a good replacement, eh?
Yes, sir.
Dresdrad replied. Fortunately, as part of his cover, he also had extensively studied navigation, and while he was no expert on this topic, his skills would do.
Captain, another 14 pirate fighters are descending on us from Sector 7. They will catch up to us in 35 minutes. Those damn pirates. They know human cargo ships have the best stuff.
The captain replied rather casually.
Alright, gentlemen, full acceleration. Prepare for emergency jump in T-minus 30 minutes.
Dresdrad froze. Emergency jump? T-minus 30 minutes? The captain couldn't be serious. A crew needed hours to be prepared. The space-time debt of a rush jump would not result in an exhausted, but in a dead crew.
Mr. Novak, plot the best possible course to Follis 7?
Yes, Captain.
Was Dresdrad's deliberately calm answer. Internally, he was screaming. There was a good chance that an emergency jump would kill him. After plotting the best course to the Follis system his abilities allowed for, the acroli spy allowed himself a minute to assess his situation. There was a high chance that an emergency jump would kill him. He had to prevent that at all costs. He had to get into a cryopod ASAP, even if there was a possibility that it would blow his cover. Surely even the humans would have cryopods on their ship. Nervously, he turned to the captain and asked,
Captain, shouldn't we all get to the cryopods?
The captain and the crew of the bridge looked at Dresdrad in utter bewilderment. For half a second he thought that it was all over. Then the entire bridge exploded into laughter. Even though the ship was under attack, the episode lasted a full minute. Removing tears from his eyes, the captain finally said,
I see those few months stranded on that planet did nothing to kill your good humor.
He pushed a button at his chair, and at the end of the bridge, a door slid open.
This is the captain speaking. All crew members have permission to take their anti-FTL drum medication. Don't overdo it, people. Especially not Jenkins from engineering. Last time you were out of commission for 2 days.
In an orderly fashion, the crew of the bridge then went to the door that had slid open. They came back with bottles with various liquids. Some were white, some golden, some red, some colorless and clear. Some crew members did come back with tablets, others with some kind of powder. All were drinking, snorting, or swallowing their chosen item.
Mr. Novak, we're at T-minus 15 minutes. I suggest you take something.
This came from the captain, who had 2 empty bottles before him and was drinking his third.
Yes, sir?
Was Novak's perplexed answer. As he made his way to the small storage room, he pondered his situation. Whatever the crew was consuming, it was the key to the resilience against the effect of FTL space-time debt. This was their secret. By sheer luck or accident, he had discovered it on his very first day aboard the human vessel. He had to secure some of these items and get them back to his people. When he entered the small storage room, he saw the same bottles and powders and tablets the crew members were consuming. He took some tablets and packages with powder and hid them in his pockets. The bottles were too big to hide, so he took 2 with a golden liquid in it and returned to his station. While he opened it, he noticed the crew starting to behave strangely. The ones drinking the various liquids seemed relaxed and were joking among one another. The approaching pirates seemed almost forgotten by them. The ones that consumed the pills or powders seemed to be either asleep in their seats or completely lethargic. One crew member was grinning and waving his hands at something non-existent that was clearly visible just to him. In all his studies about the humanity and their culture and history, Dresrad had never come across anything like this. But if he wanted to survive, he had no other choice. He opened the bottle and took a sip. It nearly killed him. The liquid was burning as it poured down his throat. It left a heavy sensation in his gut while entering his stomach. He coughed violently. The crew didn't seem to notice. Dresrad wondered as he forced himself to take another sip. This time it was still bad, but not as bad as during the first sip. Soon after, he started to feel strangely. There was some pressure in his head, but in a good way. He was happy and relaxed. He took a third sip. The stuff was tasting better and better. By the time the timer had reached T-0 and the ship had jumped into FTL travel, Dresrad had emptied his second bottle. Acroli Prime. 4 months later.
What does this even mean?
Senior Counselor Toltis inquired to his fellow council members.
We assumed that Dresrad was dead of capture, and now half a year later we get one cryptic message from him?
None of the other council members replied. All of them were as equally confused as Toltis. All had assumed that Dresrad's mission had been a failure, but after months of silence, an encrypted message had reached the Acroli domain. It was a recording of Dresrad in his human form that was less than 20 seconds long. He was in a badly kept room that seemed to be a human starship quarter. Around him were pills and powder packages and empty bottles. Dresrad was looking into the recording device. Although the council had watched these recordings a dozen times already, they could not make any sense of it. They played it again. With slurring words, a strangely behaving Dresrad muttered in almost incomprehensible Acroli standard.
How they do it? They drink and they take drugs. Somehow it completely negates the effects of the space-time debt.
He took a sip from a bottle with a golden liquid.
That's their secret. Humans are constantly intoxicated. They're constantly drunk.
The last few seconds of the message were just mad laughter. The Acroli council members looked at each other in complete bewilderment.